Margaret Chun stood outside the biggest house she had ever seen. The mansion was like something from a movie. It had tall white columns and windows that sparkled in the morning sun. She looked down at her simple black dress and worn shoes. Her hands shook as she held the small bag with all her things. This was her new job. She was going to be a housekeeper for Vincent Ashford, one of the richest men in the city. Margaret had read about him in newspapers. He owned a big technology company and had more money than she could imagine. But the stories also said he was cold and mean to people who worked for him. Margaret did not want this job. She had studied hard in college and got a degree in economics. She had dreamed of working in a bank or a business office. But life had other plans for her. Her father got very sick 2 years ago. The doctor said he needed expensive treatment that their insurance would not pay for. Margaret had to quit her good job and take any work she could find to pay for his medicine. She had worked in restaurants, cleaned offices at night, and even delivered newspapers, but none of these jobs paid enough money. When she saw the ad for a housekeeper job that paid 3 times more than her other work, she knew she had to try. Even if it meant working for a man who treated people badly, Margaret walked up the long stone path to the front door. The gardens around the house were perfect. Every flower was in the right place. Every tree was cut just right. It must cost a lot of money to keep everything so beautiful. She pressed the doorbell and heard music playing inside. It sounded like classical music, but she was not sure. An older woman with gray hair opened the door. She wore a black uniform and looked very serious. "You must be Margaret Chun," she said. "I am Mrs. Wilson, the head housekeeper. You are late." Margaret looked at her watch. "I am sorry. The bus was late, and I got lost trying to find the house." Mrs. Wilson made a sound that showed she was not happy. "Mr. Ashford does not like people who are late. Come inside. I will show you around and tell you the rules." Margaret followed Mrs. Wilson into the house. Her mouth opened in surprise. The ceiling was so high she had to bend her neck back to see it. A huge light made of glass hung from the top. The floors were made of shiny marble that showed her face like a mirror. Everything was white and gold and looked very expensive. "Close your mouth," Mrs. Wilson said. "This is nothing special. Mr. Ashford has 3 other houses just like this." 1. They walked through room after room. Each one was bigger and fancier than the last. There was a dining room with a table that could seat 20 people. There was a library with books from floor to ceiling. There was a room just for watching movies with big leather chairs. Then they came to a room that made Margaret stop walking. In the center was a beautiful black piano. It was the biggest piano she had ever seen. The wood was so shiny she could see her face in it. The keys were white as snow. Margaret felt her heart beat faster. She had not seen a piano like this in 3 years. "Do not even think about it," Mrs. Wilson said. "That piano cost more than most people make in 5 years. Only special guests are allowed to touch it. Staff members are never allowed near it." Margaret nodded, but she could not stop looking at the piano. She remembered when she was little and her mother first taught her to play. She remembered the feeling of the keys under her fingers. She remembered the beautiful sounds she could make. But that was a long time ago. Now she was just a housekeeper. Mrs. Wilson kept walking. "The kitchen is through here. You will eat your meals in the small room next to it. You are not allowed to eat in the main dining room. You will have 1 day off each week. You cannot have visitors in the house. You must wear your uniform at all times when you are working." Margaret listened to all the rules. There were so many of them. She could not talk to Mr. Ashford unless he talked to her first. She could not use the main stairs. She had to use the back stairs that the staff used. She could not watch TV in the main rooms. She could not make phone calls from the house phones. "Your room is on the 3rd floor," Mrs. Wilson said as they climbed a narrow staircase. "You will share a bathroom with 2 other girls who work here. Breakfast is at 6 in the morning. Work starts at 7. Margaret's room was small and simple. It had a bed, a small table, and a chair. There was one window that looked out at the back of the house. She could see a swimming pool and tennis court. Rich people had everything. "Put on your uniform and come downstairs," Mrs. Wilson said. "I will show you what work you need to do today." Margaret changed into the black dress and white apron that was her uniform. She looked at herself in the small mirror. She looked like a servant from an old movie. Her mother would be so sad to see her like this. But her mother was dead, and her father needed her help. When she came downstairs, Mrs. Wilson was waiting with a list of jobs. "You will clean the main hall, the library, and the music room. Be very careful with everything. If you break something, it will cost more than you make in a year." Margaret started her work. She dusted every table and chair. She cleaned every window until it sparkled. She swept and mopped the floors. The work was hard, but she was used to hard work. When she got to the music room, she tried not to look at the piano. But it was hard to ignore. It was so beautiful. She remembered all the hours she had spent playing when she was young. She remembered the dreams she had of playing in big concert halls. But those dreams were gone now. As she dusted the table next to the piano, she heard footsteps. A tall man in an expensive suit walked into the room. He had dark hair and cold blue eyes. This had to be Vincent Ashford. Margaret quickly looked down at the floor. "You must be the new housekeeper," he said. His voice was deep and not friendly. "I hope you work better than the last one. She was lazy and stupid." "Yes, sir," Margaret said quietly. She did not look up at him. "Mrs. Wilson told me you went to college. What did you study?" "Economics, sir." Vincent laughed, but it was not a happy sound. "Economics. And now you clean my house. I guess your expensive education was not worth much." Margaret felt her face get hot. She wanted to tell him that she had good grades in college. She wanted to tell him about her father and why she had to take this job. But she knew she needed the money, so she said nothing. "Well, at least you know your place," Vincent said. "Just remember, you work for me now. Do what you are told and stay out of my way." He walked out of the room, leaving Margaret alone with the piano. She looked at it one more time and made herself a promise. She would work hard and save money. She would help her father get better. And maybe someday she would play piano again. But for now, she was just a housekeeper in a big house, working for a man who thought he was better than everyone else. Margaret picked up her cleaning cloth and got back to work. She had a lot to learn about her new life. 3 weeks had passed since Margaret started working at the mansion. She had learned the daily routine and all the rules. Every morning, she woke up at 6 and cleaned the house until evening. She worked hard and tried to stay away from Vincent Ashford. When she saw him coming, she would quickly move to another room. Vincent was not a kind boss. He yelled at the staff when things were not perfect. Last week, he fired a gardener because one flower was dying. He made a cook cry because the soup was too hot. Margaret watched all this and knew she had to be very careful, but the worst part was not Vincent's mean words. The worst part was walking past the piano every day and not being able to touch it. Sometimes, when she was cleaning the music room alone, she would stop and look at the keys. Her fingers would move in the air, playing songs that only she could hear. Margaret called her father every few days from a phone outside the house. He was getting a little better with the new medicine, but he still needed treatment for many more months. The bills kept coming. Margaret sent almost all her money to pay for his care. She only kept enough to buy food and bus tickets. "How's your new job?" her father asked during one call. His voice sounded weak and tired. "It is fine, Papa," Margaret said. She did not want to tell him how hard it was. "The house is very big and beautiful. I am learning a lot." "I'm sorry you have to do this work," her father said. "You should be using your education, not cleaning houses. Do not worry about me." "Papa, just focus on getting better. That is all that matters." After she hung up the phone, Margaret felt very sad. Her father had worked so hard to pay for her college. He had been so proud when she graduated. Now she was just a servant, and it was all because of his sickness. One Tuesday morning, Mrs. Wilson came to find Margaret while she was cleaning the kitchen. The older woman looked worried and upset. "There is a problem," Mrs. Wilson said. "Mr. Ashford is having an important dinner party tonight." Very rich and powerful people are coming. He wants everything to be perfect. What can I do to help? Margaret asked. The piano player who was supposed to come tonight just called. She is sick and cannot come. Mr. Ashford is very angry. This dinner is important for his business. He wants to impress these people. Margaret felt sorry for Mrs. Wilson. She knew Vincent would blame her for the problem, even though it was not her fault. Maybe he can find another piano player, Margaret suggested. It is too late, Mrs. Wilson said. The dinner is in 6 hours. All the good piano players in the city are busy tonight. Mr. Ashford is in his office making angry phone calls, but no one can come. Margaret went back to her cleaning, but she kept thinking about the problem. She knew how important music was. At fancy dinner parties, rich people expected to be entertained while they ate. Without music, Vincent's dinner party would not go well. At 4 in the afternoon, the guests started arriving. Margaret watched from the kitchen window as expensive cars pulled up to the house. Men in perfect suits and women in beautiful dresses got out. These were the kind of people who had never worried about money or worked hard jobs. Margaret and the other staff worked to serve drinks and small foods to the guests. Everyone seemed happy and relaxed. They talked about their businesses and their trips to other countries. Margaret listened as she carried trays of food. Then she heard Vincent talking to a man with gray hair. I'm sorry about the music situation, Vincent said. The piano player got sick at the last minute. That is too bad, the man said. I was looking forward to hearing some good music tonight. Music makes everything more pleasant. Yes, said a woman in a red dress. Without music, dinner parties are just business meetings. Margaret could see that Vincent was getting more upset. His face was red and his hands were tight. This dinner was supposed to help him make a big business deal. Without the music, the evening might not go well. Margaret was carrying dirty plates back to the kitchen when she heard Vincent call her name. She turned around and saw him walking toward her. His eyes looked angry and mean. You, he said loudly. Come here. Margaret put down the plates and walked over to him. All the guests stopped talking and looked at her. She felt her face get hot. What had she done wrong? Mrs. Wilson told me you studied music in college, Vincent said. His voice was cold and hard. Is that true? Yes, sir, Margaret said quietly. I studied music theory, Vincent smiled, but it was not a nice smile. Perfect. Since our piano player could not come tonight, you can take her place. Margaret felt like her heart stopped beating. Sir, I do not think ... I am not asking what you think, Vincent said. His voice got louder. I am telling you what you will do. You will go to the piano and play music for my guests. The guests were all watching now. Some of them looked surprised. Others looked uncomfortable. Margaret could see they thought Vincent was being mean to her. But sir, Margaret said, I have not played piano in years. I am just a housekeeper. Exactly, Vincent said with his mean smile. You are just a housekeeper. So you will do what I tell you to do. Go to the piano and play something, anything. I do not care if you are good or bad. My guests need entertainment. Margaret looked around the room. All the rich people were staring at her. She could see that some of them felt sorry for her. Others looked like they thought this was funny. Vincent was trying to embarrass her in front of all these important people. Margaret felt angry and hurt. Vincent was treating her like she was not a real person. He wanted to show his guests that he had power over the people who worked for him. He wanted them to see him be cruel to someone who could not fight back. But Margaret also thought about her father in the hospital. She thought about the bills that needed to be paid. She thought about the medicine he needed to get better. If she refused to play the piano, Vincent would fire her. Then how would she pay for her father's treatment? I will try, sir, Margaret said. Her voice was so quiet that people had to lean forward to hear her. Good, Vincent said. Everyone, please go to the music room. Our entertainment is about to begin. The guests followed Vincent to the music room. Margaret walked behind them with slow steps. Her hands were shaking and her mouth was dry. She had not touched a piano in 3 years. What if she had forgotten how to play? What if she made mistakes and embarrassed herself even more? When they got to the music room, Vincent pointed to the piano bench. "Sit down and play," he ordered. Margaret walked to the beautiful black piano. She remembered the first time she had seen it 3 weeks ago. She had dreamed about playing it, but not like this. Not with people watching her and expecting her to fail. She sat down on the bench and looked at the white keys. They seemed to glow in the light from the fancy lamps. She could hear the guests talking quietly behind her. Some of them sounded excited to see what would happen. Others sounded worried for her. Margaret put her hands on the keys. They felt cold and smooth under her fingers. For a moment she forgot about Vincent and the guests and the embarrassment. For a moment she just remembered how much she loved music. She took a deep breath and started to play. First, her fingers felt stiff and slow. She played a simple song that she remembered from when she was little. The notes were not perfect, and she made a few small mistakes. Behind her, she could hear Vincent making a sound that showed he was not happy, but then something magical happened. As Margaret kept playing, her fingers remembered what to do. The music started to flow like water. Her hands moved faster and smoother across the keys. The simple song became something beautiful. Margaret forgot about everything except the music. She forgot about Vincent's mean smile. She forgot about the guests watching her. She forgot about being a housekeeper in a uniform. She was just Margaret, playing piano like she had always dreamed of doing. The room became very quiet. Even the guests stopped talking and listened to the music. Margaret could feel the piano responding to her touch. Every note was clear and perfect. The sound filled the big room and touched everyone's hearts. When Margaret finished the song, there was complete silence. Then slowly the guests started to clap. The sound grew louder and louder until everyone was clapping very hard. Some people were even standing up. Margaret turned around and looked at the guests. Their faces showed surprise and amazement. They had expected to see a servant fail and embarrass herself. Instead, they had heard beautiful music from someone they thought was just a housekeeper, but the most surprised face of all belonged to Vincent Ashford. His mouth was open and his eyes were wide. He looked like he could not believe what he had just heard. The mean smile was completely gone from his face. Margaret stood up from the piano bench. She felt different than she had in 3 years. For a few minutes, she had not been just a servant. She had been a musician again. She had remembered who she really was inside. "That was wonderful," said the woman in the red dress. "Where did you learn to play like that?" Before Margaret could answer, Vincent found his voice again. "That will be enough," he said quickly. "Margaret, go back to the kitchen. Help serve dinner." Margaret nodded and walked toward the door. As she passed the guests, several of them smiled at her with respect. One man even said, "Beautiful playing, young lady." As Margaret left the music room, she could hear the guests talking excitedly about her performance. Margaret's heart was still beating fast when she reached the kitchen. Her hands were shaking, but not from fear anymore. They were shaking from excitement and joy. She had just played piano in front of people for the first time in 3 years. And she had played well? Very well. Mrs. Wilson was waiting in the kitchen with a worried look on her face. "What happened in there?" she asked. "I heard clapping." "I played the piano," Margaret said simply. And it went well. The guests seemed to like it. Mrs. Wilson looked surprised. "Really? But Mr. Ashford looked so angry when he told you to play. I thought he was trying to embarrass you." "He was," Margaret said, "but I played anyway. I had to." The other staff members in the kitchen had heard the music too. They looked at Margaret with new respect. Cook, an older man who had worked for Vincent for 5 years, shook his head in amazement. "In all my time here, I have never seen Mr. Ashford look so shocked," Cook said. "When I peeked into the music room, his face was white as paper." "You really surprised him." Margaret started helping to serve the dinner. As she carried plates of expensive food to the dining room, she could hear the guests still talking about her playing. They spoke in excited voices about how beautiful the music had. Then they wondered where Vincent had found such a talented piano player. "That young woman has real gift," said the man with gray hair. "She should be performing in concert halls, not working as a servant." "I agree," said the woman in the red dress. Her playing was absolutely wonderful, so much feeling and skill. Vincent sat at the head of the table, trying to smile and act normal, but Margaret could see he was still upset. Every time someone mentioned her playing, his jaw got tight and his eyes got hard. He had wanted to humiliate her, but instead she had impressed his important guests. As Margaret served dessert, she noticed that Vincent was not eating much. He kept looking toward the kitchen door where she came and went. She could feel his angry stare on her back every time she entered the room. The dinner party continued late into the night. The guests talked about business deals and made plans for future meetings. Margaret could tell that Vincent's evening was going well from a business point of view. The men were interested in working with him. The women were charmed by his expensive house and fancy dinner. But Margaret also noticed that many of the guests kept asking about her. They wanted to know her name and where she had learned to play piano. Vincent answered their questions with short, cold words. He clearly did not want to talk about her anymore. Finally, around midnight, the guests started to leave. Margaret and the other staff cleaned up the dishes and put away the expensive glasses and silverware. As the last car drove away from the house, Margaret felt very tired. It had been a long and emotional day. She was wiping down the tables in the dining room when she heard footsteps behind her. She turned around and saw Vincent standing in the doorway. He had taken off his suit jacket and loosened his tie. His face looked angry and confused. "Come with me," he said. "We need to talk." Margaret followed him to his office. It was a big room with dark wood furniture and shelves full of books about business. Vincent's desk was covered with papers and computer screens. On the walls were pictures of him with famous people and awards for his company. Vincent closed the door and pointed to a chair. "Sit down." Margaret sat down and waited. She tried to keep her face calm, but inside she was nervous. What was Vincent going to say? Was he going to fire her for showing him up in front of his guests? Vincent walked around his desk and sat down across from her. For a long moment, he just stared at her. His blue eyes looked like ice. "Where did you learn to play piano like that?" he asked finally. Margaret thought about lying. She could make up a simple story about taking lessons as a child, but something told her to tell the truth. "I studied at the Royal Conservatory of Music for 6 years, she said. "I was training to be a professional pianist." Vincent's eyes got wider. "The Royal Conservatory? That is one of the best music schools in the country. How did a housekeeper get accepted there?" "I was not always a housekeeper," Margaret said quietly. "I won a scholarship when I was 12 years old. The teachers said I had natural talent." "Then why are you here cleaning my house?" Vincent asked. "Why are you not performing in concert halls like my guests said?" Margaret felt her throat get tight. She did not want to tell this cold, mean man about her father's sickness. But she knew he would not stop asking until she told him the truth. "My father got sick," she said. "Very sick. The treatment he needs is expensive and our insurance will not pay for it. I had to quit music school and get jobs to pay for his medicine." Vincent leaned back in his chair. "How sick?" "He has a rare disease that attacks his blood. Without treatment, he will die. With treatment, he might get better. But the treatment costs thousands of dollars every month." "And you gave up your music career to save him?" "He is my father," Margaret said simply. "He worked 2 jobs to pay for my music lessons when I was little. He believed in my dreams even when other people said they were impossible. I could not let him die because we did not have enough money." Vincent was quiet for a long time. He looked out the window at his expensive gardens. Margaret could not tell what he was thinking. His face showed no emotion at all. "How long since you played piano seriously?" he asked. 3 years. I sold my piano to help pay for Papa's first surgery. Since then, I have only been able to play in my mind. But tonight you played like you practice every day. How is that possible?" Margaret smiled a little. "Music is not something you forget. It becomes part of you. When I put my hands on your piano, everything came back. The songs, the techniques, the feeling, it was all still there, waiting." Vincent stood up and walked to the window. My guests were very impressed tonight. They kept asking about you. One man even asked if you give private lessons to children. I am sorry if that bothered you, Margaret said. I know you wanted me to fail in front of them. Vincent turned around quickly. Why do you say that? Because it is true? You were angry about the piano player not coming. You wanted to punish someone for the problem. So you decided to embarrass me by making me play piano when you thought I could not do it well. Vincent's face got red. That is not ... Yes, it is, Margaret said. She was tired of being afraid of him. You wanted your rich friends to laugh at the poor housekeeper who thought she could play piano? You wanted to show them how powerful you are by being cruel to someone who works for you. You are wrong, Vincent said, but his voice was not as strong as usual. Am I? Then why did you smile that mean smile when you told me to play? Why did you hope I would embarrass myself? Vincent sat down heavily in his chair. For the first time since Margaret had met him, he looked uncertain. I do not know, he said quietly. I think you do know, Margaret said. I think you enjoy making people feel small because it makes you feel big. But tonight your plan did not work. And now you do not know what to do. They sat in silence for several minutes. Margaret could hear the big clock in the hallway ticking. She could hear cars driving past the house. She wondered if Vincent was going to fire her now for speaking to him so honestly. Finally, Vincent spoke again. Tell me about your father's disease. Margaret was surprised by the question. Why do you want to know? Just tell me. So Margaret told him everything. She told him about the day her father collapsed at work. She told him about the doctors and the tests and the diagnosis that changed their whole life. She told him about watching her strong, proud father become weak and scared. She told him about selling everything they owned to pay for treatment. The new medicine is working, she said. But he needs it for at least 2 more years, maybe longer. That is why I have to keep this job, no matter how you treat me. My father's life depends on the money I make here. When Margaret finished talking, Vincent was staring at his hands. I did not know, he said. You never asked, Margaret replied. You never ask any of your workers about their lives. You just give orders and expect people to obey. That is how business works, Vincent said, but he did not sound sure about it anymore. Maybe that is how your business works, Margaret said. But people are not businesses. We have feelings and dreams and problems. We have families who need. U.S., we are not just tools for you to use. Vincent looked up at her. You are not like other people who work for me. No, Margaret agreed. I am not. I have an education and dreams and talents. But so do other people. You just never bothered to find out about them. Vincent stood up again. He looked tired and confused. I need to think about all this. Go back to your room. We will talk more. Tomorrow, Margaret stood up to leave. When she reached the door, she turned back to look at Vincent. He was sitting at his desk with his head in his hands. Mr. Ashford, she said. He looked up at her. Thank you for letting me play your piano tonight. Even if you meant it to be cruel, it was the first time in 3 years that I felt like myself again. Margaret left the office and walked upstairs to her small room. She lay down on her narrow bed and closed her eyes. Her fingers still remembered the feeling of the piano keys. Her ears still heard the beautiful music she had made. For the first time since she started working at the mansion, Margaret felt hope. Not hope that Vincent would become a better person. Not hope that her life would become easier. The next morning, Margaret woke up feeling different. She had slept better than she had in months. Her dreams had been full of music and beautiful sounds. For a moment, she forgot where she was and what her life had become. Then she heard Mrs. Wilson calling for everyone to get up, and reality came back. Margaret put on her uniform and went downstairs for breakfast. The other staff members looked at her with new respect. Word had spread through the house about what happened at the dinner party. Cook smiled at her when she sat down to eat. You are famous now, he said with a laugh. Everyone is talking about the housekeeper who plays piano like an angel. It was just one song, Margaret said, but she felt proud. It was more than that. said Sarah, one of the other housekeepers. Mrs. Wilson told us that the guests could not stop talking about you. They said you were better than the professional piano players they usually hire. Mrs. Wilson came into the kitchen looking worried. Margaret, Mr. Ashford wants to see you in his office before you start your work today. Margaret's good feeling disappeared. She had been expecting this. Vincent was probably going to fire her for embarrassing him in front of his guests. She had spoken too honestly to him last night. Rich men like Vincent did not like servants who told them the truth. "Do not look so scared," Mrs. Wilson said. "He did not sound angry this morning, just serious." Margaret finished her breakfast quickly and walked to Vincent's office. She knocked on the door and heard him say, "Come in." When she entered, she was surprised to see that he looked different. He was still wearing an expensive suit, but his face was not as cold as usual. He looked like he had not slept well. "Sit down," Vincent said, pointing to the same chair she had sat in the night before. Margaret sat down and waited for him to speak. She tried to prepare herself for being fired. At least she had gotten to play piano one more time before losing. "This job, I made some phone calls this morning," Vincent said. "I called the Royal Conservatory of Music." Margaret felt her heart jump. Why would he call her old school? "I spoke to the dean of the music program," Vincent continued. "I told him about a young woman named Margaret Chun who used to study there. I asked him what kind of student she was." Margaret stared at him. "Why did you do that?" "Because I needed to know if you were telling me the truth last night." Vincent leaned forward in his chair. "The dean remembered you very well. He said you were one of the most talented students they had ever taught. He said you won every competition you entered. He said you were being considered for a full scholarship to continue your studies in Europe." Margaret felt tears starting in her eyes. She remembered those days when her future looked so bright. She remembered her teachers telling her that she could play in the best concert halls in the world. Those dreams seemed so far away now. "He also told me why you left school," Vincent said quietly. "He said your father got sick and you had to quit to take care of him. He said the whole music department was sad to lose you. They thought you would become famous someday." "That was a long time ago," Margaret said. "Things change. People have to do what they must do to survive." Vincent stood up and walked to his window. "The dean asked me something interesting. He asked if you still play piano. When I told him about last night, he became very excited. He said that if you could still play at that level after 3 years away from music, you might be the most naturally gifted pianist he had ever known." Margaret did not know what to say. Why was Vincent telling her all this? Was he trying to make her feel worse about her lost dreams? "I also made another phone call this morning," Vincent said. "I called Dr. Harrison at City General Hospital. He is the best blood disease specialist in the country. I told him about your father's condition." Margaret felt shocked. "You called about my father? Why?" "Because I wanted to understand his medical situation. Dr. Harrison said that with the right treatment, your father has a good chance of getting completely better, but the treatment is expensive and takes time." "I already know that," Margaret said. "That is why I am working here." Vincent turned away from the window and looked at her. "How much money do you need?" "For all of your father's treatment, I mean." "How much would it cost to make him completely well?" Margaret felt confused. "I do not understand why you are asking me this." "Just answer the question, how much money?" Margaret thought about all the bills and all the medicine her father still needed. "About $50,000, she said quietly. "Maybe more," Vincent nodded. "That is what Dr. Harrison estimated too." He walked back to his desk and sat down. "I want to make you an offer." "What kind of offer?" "I will pay for all of your father's medical treatment, every penny. All the medicine, all the doctor visits, everything he needs to get completely well." Margaret could not believe what she was hearing. "Why would you do that?" "In exchange for something," Vincent said. "I have a daughter. Her name is Emma. She is 15 years old and lives with her mother most of the time. But she comes to stay with me during school holidays." Margaret waited for him to continue. "Emma is supposed to take piano lessons. Her mother and I want her to learn music because it is part of a good education, but Emma hates her piano teacher. She refuses to practice and fights with us about it constantly. We have tried 3 different teachers, but nothing works. Margaret listened carefully. She was starting to understand where this conversation was going. Emma will be coming to stay with me next week for summer vacation, Vincent continued. She will be here for 2 months. I want you to teach her piano during that time. Me? Margaret said. But I am just a housekeeper. I am not a professional teacher. You are much more than a housekeeper, Vincent said. You are a trained musician from one of the best music schools in the country. And after hearing you play last night, I think you might be exactly what Emma needs. Margaret felt overwhelmed. This was not what she had expected when she came to his office this morning. I do not know if I can teach. I have never taught piano to children before. The dean at the conservatory said you helped teach younger students when you were there. He said you were very good at it. Margaret remembered those days. She had enjoyed helping the younger students learn difficult pieces. It had felt good to share her love of music with them. What exactly are you asking me to do? Margaret said. I want you to give Emma piano lessons every day while she is here. Help her learn to love music the way you do. If you can do that, I will pay for your father's complete medical treatment. Margaret felt like her head was spinning. $50,000. All of her father's medical bills paid. He could get the best treatment available and not have to worry about money. He could focus on getting better instead of worrying about how much everything cost. There must be a catch, Margaret said. This seems too good to be true. Vincent looked uncomfortable. There's one more thing. I also want you to continue working as a housekeeper while you teach Emma. You would have 2 jobs instead of 1. Why? Because I do not want Emma to know that you are really a trained musician. If she finds out you went to conservatory and gave up music for your family, she might feel guilty about her own music lessons. I want her to think you are just a housekeeper who happens to know how to play piano. Margaret thought about this. It seemed strange, but she could understand Vincent's thinking. Rich children sometimes felt guilty when they learned about poor people who had bigger problems than they did. What if Emma does not like me? Margaret asked. What if I cannot help her learn to love music? Then we will try something else, Vincent said. But I have a feeling you will succeed. You have something that her other teachers did not have. What is that? Passion, real love for music. When you played last night, everyone in the room could feel how much music means to you. That kind of feeling is contagious. If anyone can help Emma love music, it is you. Margaret sat quietly for a moment, thinking. This was a huge opportunity. She could save her father's life and do something she loved at the same time. But it also seemed almost too good to be true. Why was Vincent really doing this? Can I ask you something? Margaret said. Double quotes. Yes. Why are you really offering me this? Yesterday you tried to embarrass me in front of your guests. Today you want to pay $50,000 to help my father. What changed? Vincent looked down at his hands. Last night you said something that bothered me? You said I enjoy making. People feel small because it makes me feel big. I thought about that all night, and I realized you were right. I have been cruel to people because I could be. Because I had power over them and they could not fight back. But when I saw you play piano last night, I saw something I had forgotten existed. What was that? Beauty, real talent. Something that money cannot buy? Vincent looked up at her. I have spent so many years focused on making money and gaining power that I forgot about other things that matter. Music, art, helping people. You reminded me of what I used to care about when I was younger. Margaret studied his face. He seemed sincere, but she had learned not to trust rich people too easily. If I agree to do this, she said, I have some conditions. Vincent looked surprised. What conditions? First, you have to promise that you will pay for my father's treatment. Even if Emma does not become a good piano student. Monday morning came quickly. Margaret had spent the whole week thinking about how to teach Emma piano. She had borrowed music books from the library and written down ideas for lessons. She wanted to be ready for whatever kind of student Emma turned out to be. Vincent had kept his promise about treating the staff better. He said please and thank you when he asked for things. He had not yelled at anyone all week. Mrs. Wilson told Margaret that she had never seen him act so politely before. Whatever you said to him in his office last week really changed something, Mrs. Wilson said. He is like a different person. Margaret hoped the change would last. Sometimes people acted nice for a short time and then went back to their old ways, but Vincent seemed genuinely different. He had even asked Cook about his family and helped carry some heavy boxes that were delivered to the house. At 10 in the morning, a black car pulled up to the mansion. Margaret watched from the kitchen window as the driver got out and opened the back door. A teenage girl stepped out of the car. She had long dark hair and was wearing expensive clothes, but her face looked angry and unhappy. This had to be Emma. Emma said something to the driver that Margaret could not hear. The driver looked uncomfortable and just nodded. He took 2 suitcases out of the car and carried them to the front door. Emma followed him with slow, unwilling steps. Margaret heard the doorbell ring and then heard Vincent's voice in the front hall. "Hello, Emma. How was the drive?" "Boring," Emma said in a flat voice. "Just like everything else about being here." Margaret felt sorry for Emma. The girl clearly did not want to be at her father's house. She sounded like she was already unhappy before she even got inside. "Mrs. Wilson will show you to your room," Vincent said. "You can get settled and then we will have lunch together." "I am not hungry," Emma said. "Well, when you are hungry, let me know. We can eat whenever you want." Margaret was surprised by how patient Vincent sounded. With his employees, he had always been demanding and impatient. But with his daughter, he seemed almost afraid to say the wrong thing. A few minutes later, Mrs. Wilson came into the kitchen. "That girl is going to be trouble," she said, shaking her head. "She barely looked at me when I showed her to her room. Just threw herself on the bed and stared at the ceiling." "She is probably just tired," Margaret said. "And she might not want to be here." "Well, she better learn some manners while she is in this house," Mrs. Wilson said. "Rich or not, children should be polite to adults." Margaret spent the morning doing her regular housework, but her mind was on Emma. She wondered what the girl was like and whether she would be willing to learn piano. From what Margaret had seen so far, Emma seemed angry and uncooperative. Teaching her was going to be a challenge. At lunchtime, Margaret was asked to serve food to Vincent and Emma in the dining room. When she walked in with plates of food, she got her first close look at Emma. The girl was about 15, just like Vincent had said. She had beautiful dark eyes and perfect skin, but her face looked sad and angry at the same time. Emma was picking at her food and not talking to her father. Vincent was trying to make conversation, but Emma only answered with 1 or 2 words. "How is school going?" Vincent asked. "Fine." "Are you excited about summer vacation?" "Not really." "Maybe we can do some fun things together while you're here. Go to museums or concerts or—" "I do not want to do anything," Emma interrupted. "I just want to go back home." Vincent looked hurt. Margaret could see that he was trying hard to connect with his daughter, but Emma was not making it easy. As Margaret served dessert, Vincent said, "Emma, I have arranged for you to take piano lessons while you are here." Emma's head shot up. "No," she said firmly. "I told you and Mom that I do not want to take piano lessons anymore. I hate piano." "But music is important," Vincent said. "You need to learn." "I do not need to learn anything," Emma said, her voice getting louder. "I am tired of being told what I need to learn and what I need to do and what I need to be. I just want to be left alone." "Emma, please." "No." Emma stood up from the table. "I am not taking piano lessons." "You cannot make me." She ran out of the dining room, leaving Vincent sitting alone at the big table. He looked embarrassed and sad. Margaret felt sorry for both of them. "I am sorry." "You had to see that," Vincent said to Margaret. "Emma has been angry like this for months. Her mother and I do not know what to do." "Teenagers are often angry," Margaret said gently. "They are trying to figure out who they are and what they want. It is normal, but she used to love music when she was little. She would sing and dance and ask me to play music for her. I do not understand what changed." Margaret thought about this. Maybe she feels like music is something adults are forcing on her instead of something she chooses for herself. When people feel forced to do things, they often rebel against them. Vincent nodded slowly. You might be right, but how do I help her? How do I make her want to learn piano? You cannot make anyone want anything, Margaret said. But maybe you can help her discover reasons to want it herself. What do you mean? Let me talk to her first. Not about piano lessons, just about other things. Let me get to know her as a person. Then maybe we can find a way to interest her in music that does not feel like pressure. Vincent looked hopeful. Do you think that might work? I do not know, Margaret said honestly, but it is worth trying. The worst thing that can happen is that she says no. That afternoon, Margaret went to Emma's room and knocked on the door. Emma, my name is Margaret. I brought you some cookies and milk. I do not want any cookies, Emma said through the door. That is okay. I will leave them outside your door in case you change your mind later. Margaret sat the cookies and milk on a tray outside Emma's door. Then she went back to her work. An hour later, when she walked past Emma's room again, the tray was empty. The next day, Margaret tried again. This time she brought Emma some books. I noticed you like to read, she said through the door. I found some books in the library that you might enjoy. What kind of books? Emma asked. Adventure stories, fantasy novels. Some books about travel to interesting places. The door opened a little bit. Emma peeked out. You can just leave them there, she said. Okay, if you want to talk about any of them after you read them, I would like that. I love books too. That evening, Emma came down to the kitchen while Margaret was cleaning up after dinner. The book about the girl who travels around the world was good, Emma said quietly. I am glad you liked it, Margaret said. Have you ever wanted to travel to other countries? Yes, but my parents say I have to wait until I am older. They think everywhere is too dangerous. Some places are dangerous, Margaret agreed. But there are many safe places that are also beautiful and interesting. Maybe someday you will get to see them. Emma sat down at the kitchen table. Are you the housekeeper? Yes, I clean the house and help with meals. Do you like working here? Margaret thought about how to answer that honestly. It is a job. Your father pays me well and I need the money. Some parts of the job are better than others. My father can be mean sometimes, Emma said. Yes, he can be. But I think he is trying to be better. Why do you think that? Because this week he has been nicer to everyone who works here. He says please and thank you. He asks about our families. That is new, Emma looked surprised. Really? He is usually just focused on work and money? People can change, Margaret said. Even adults? Even parents? They talked for a few more minutes about books and travel and school. Emma seemed less angry when she was talking about things she was interested in. Margaret could see that underneath the anger was a smart, curious girl who just felt misunderstood. The next day, Emma came to the kitchen again. This time she asked Margaret about her life. Where had she grown up? Did she have family? What did she like to do when she was not working? Margaret answered carefully. She did not want to lie to Emma, but she also could not tell her the whole truth about music school and her father's illness. So she talked about growing up poor but happy. She talked about loving to read and learn new things. She talked about taking care of people she loved. You seem too smart to be just a housekeeper, Emma said. Smart people sometimes have to take whatever jobs they can find, Margaret said. Life does not always go the way we plan. That is true, Emma said sadly. I wanted my parents to stay together, but they got divorced when I was 12. I wanted to go to art school, but they say I need to study business or law. I wanted to have friends, but we moved too much for me to make real friends. Margaret felt sorry for Emma. The girl had money and expensive things, but she did not have some of the things that really mattered. Stable family, support for her dreams, and real friendships. What kind of art do you like? Margaret asked. Drawing and painting. Sometimes I write stories too. But my parents think art is just a hobby. They want me to do practical things that will help me make money. Art can be practical too, Margaret said. Many people make good livings as artists, writers, and designers. That is what I tell them, but they do not listen. Margaret had an idea. Would you like to see something beautiful? What? Follow me. Margaret led Emma to the music room where the grand piano sat. Emma had probably seen it before, but Margaret wanted her to really look at it. Emma's piano lessons began slowly and carefully. Margaret did not want to push too hard or make Emma feel pressured like she had with her other teachers. Instead, she let Emma guide what they did together. The first week, they just listened to music. Margaret played different songs on the piano while Emma sat beside her and listened. Sometimes Margaret would ask Emma what the music made her think about or how it made her feel. Emma's answers showed that she understood music in ways that surprised Margaret. That song sounds like morning, Emma said after hearing a bright, cheerful piece. Like the sun is just coming up and everything is fresh and new. This one sounds sad but also hopeful, she said about another song. Like someone is crying but they know things will get better. Margaret was amazed by how well Emma could hear the emotions in music. Many people could not do that even after years of lessons. Emma had a natural gift for understanding what music was trying to say. In the second week, Margaret began showing Emma very simple things on the piano. Not scales or exercises like most teachers started with, but easy melodies that sounded beautiful right away. Emma's fingers were clumsy at first, but she was patient with herself because she wanted to learn. I like this better than my other lessons, Emma told Margaret. Mrs. Patterson always made me play boring exercises for hours before I could play. Anything that sounded like real music. Exercises are important, Margaret said. But they should come after you fall in love with music, not before. First, you need to understand why music is worth the hard work. Vincent often walked past the music room while Margaret and Emma were having their lessons. At first, he would just glance in quickly and keep walking. But as the days went by, he started stopping outside the door to listen. Margaret noticed him there but pretended not to see him. One afternoon, Vincent came into the music room while Margaret was teaching Emma a simple song. How are the lessons going? He asked. Good. Emma said she sounded happier than she had since arriving at the house. Margaret is teaching me to play songs that actually sound like music. That is wonderful, Vincent said. Would you play something for me? Emma looked nervous. I'm not very good yet. That is okay, Vincent said. I would just like to hear what you are learning. Emma looked at Margaret, who nodded encouragingly. Emma put her hands on the keys and played a simple melody called Ode to Joy. She made a few mistakes, but the song was still recognizable and beautiful. When she finished, Vincent clapped. That was lovely, Emma. I can tell you are learning a lot. Margaret is a good teacher, Emma said. She makes music fun instead of scary. Vincent looked at Margaret with gratitude in his eyes. I am glad to hear that. After Vincent left, Emma continued practicing. Margaret could see that she was starting to really enjoy playing piano. Emma would hum the melodies they worked on while she walked around the house. Sometimes Margaret would catch her sitting at the piano during her free time, picking out notes and trying to play songs by ear. Mrs. Wilson noticed the change in Emma too. That girl is like a different person, she told Margaret. She says good morning when she sees me. She even helped me fold laundry yesterday without being asked. Margaret was happy to see Emma becoming more cheerful, but she also noticed something else. The more time she spent teaching Emma, the more she remembered how much she loved music herself. Playing piano every day, even simple songs, made her feel alive in a way she had forgotten was possible. Late at night, when everyone else was asleep, Margaret would sometimes go to the music room and play quietly. She played the challenging pieces she had learned in conservatory, the beautiful compositions that had once been her daily practice. Her fingers remembered every note, every difficult passage, every emotional moment. One night she was playing a particularly moving piece by Chopin when she heard someone enter the room. She stopped playing and turned around, expecting to see Emma or Mrs. Wilson. Instead, she saw Vincent standing in the doorway. I am sorry, Margaret said quietly. I did not mean to wake anyone. I will stop. No, please continue, Vincent said. I was not sleeping anyway. I heard the music and came to listen. Margaret felt awkward. She was supposed to be a housekeeper who just happened to know some piano, but the piece she had been playing was far too advanced for someone who was not professionally trained. I should go back to my room, Margaret said, starting to stand up. Wait, Vincent said. That piece you were playing. It was incredibly beautiful and incredibly difficult. Where did you learn to play like that? Margaret sat back down on the piano bench. She knew she had been caught. There was no way to explain away the level of skill she had just demonstrated. I told you before that I studied music in college, he said carefully. You told me you studied music theory. You did not. Tell me you were trained as a concert pianist. Margaret sighed. I did not think it mattered. Vincent walked over to the piano and sat down in a chair nearby. Play something else, he said, double quotes, Mr. Ashford. Please. I want to understand who you really are. Margaret looked at Vincent's face. He seemed genuinely curious, not angry. So she began to play again. This time she chose a piece that showed off her technical skill and her emotional depth. It was a challenging composition that told a story of love and loss and hope. As she played, Margaret forgot about everything else. She forgot that she was supposed to be just a housekeeper. She forgot about her uniform and her small room and her daily cleaning duties. She became the musician she had always been inside. When the music ended, Vincent was quiet for a long moment. That was extraordinary, he said finally. You play at a professional level? A very high professional level. I used to, Margaret said. You still do. Talent like that does not disappear just because you stop using it professionally. They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Margaret could hear the clock ticking in the hallway and cars passing on the street outside. Why did you really give up music? Vincent asked. I know you told me about your father's illness, but there must be more to the story. Margaret thought about how much to tell him. Then she decided that he deserved to know the truth, especially since he was paying for her father's treatment. I was offered a full scholarship to study in Europe, she said, at one of the most prestigious music schools in the world. It was my dream come true. But the scholarship was for 5 years, and I could not leave my father when he was so sick. Could you not have delayed it? No, they only offered one scholarship like that every few years. If I did not take it then, I would never get another chance. So you chose your father over your career? Of course I did. He is my father. He sacrificed everything to give me the chance to study music in the first place. How could I abandon him when he needed me most? Vincent nodded slowly. That was a difficult choice? It was not difficult at all, Margaret said. It was the only choice I could make. Family comes first, always, and now? Do you regret it? Margaret thought about this carefully. I regret that my father got sick. I regret that we did not have enough money for his treatment. But I do not regret choosing to help him. I would make the same choice again. Even knowing what it cost you? Even knowing what it cost me? Vincent stood up and walked to the window. I have never known anyone who would give up so much for family. Really? You have never known anyone who loves their family more than their career? Not personally, no. In my world, people usually choose money and success over everything else, including family. Margaret felt sad for Vincent. That sounds like a lonely way to live. It is, Vincent said quietly. I've been thinking about that a lot lately. Watching you with Emma, seeing how much you care about helping her learn to love music, not just teaching her to play piano correctly. It made me realize that I have been focused on the wrong things. What do you mean? I have been so busy building my business and making money that I forgot to build a relationship with my daughter. I have been trying to force her to learn things I think are important instead of finding out what she actually cares about. Margaret could see that Vincent was struggling with these realizations. It is not too late to change, she said gently. Is not it? Emma barely talks to me. She seems much happier talking to you than to her own father. That is because I listen to her without trying to fix her or change her. I pay attention to what she likes instead of telling her what she should like. Vincent came back and sat down near the piano again. How do you do that? How do you connect with people so easily? Margaret smiled. I do not think it is easy. But I think it helps to remember that everyone wants the same basic things. To be seen, to be heard, to be understood, and to be valued for who they really are. Emma feels like I do not value who she really is. I think Emma feels like you value who you want her to become more than who she is right now. Vincent was quiet for a long moment. You are right, he said finally. I have been trying to turn her into the daughter I thought I wanted instead of appreciating the daughter I actually have. Emma is creative and smart and sensitive, Margaret said. She thinks deeply about things. She has her own opinions and dreams. Those are good qualities, even if they are not the qualities you expected her to have. How can I fix this? How can I show her that I value who she really is? As the weeks passed, Margaret watched Vincent and Emma's relationship slowly improve. Vincent was making a real effort to be more patient and understanding. He asked Emma about her art projects and listened carefully to her answers. He even bought her some expensive art supplies without being asked. Emma was responding positively to her father's attention. She started joining him for breakfast instead of eating alone in her room. She showed him her drawings and paintings. She even laughed at his jokes sometimes, which surprised everyone in the house. Margaret's piano lessons with Emma were going very well too. Emma had learned several simple songs and was working on more challenging pieces. But more importantly, Emma had developed a real love for music. She practiced every day because she wanted to, not because anyone made her. One morning, Emma came to Margaret with an excited look on her face. Margaret, I have an idea. What is it? My school is having a charity concert next month. Students can perform music or other arts to raise money for children who are sick. I want to play piano at the concert. Margaret felt surprised and proud. That is wonderful, Emma. What would you like to play? I want to play that song you taught me last week. The one called Morning Sunshine, but I want to make it special somehow. What do you mean by special? Emma thought for a moment. I want to play it for all the children who are in the hospital and cannot go to concerts. I want the music to make them feel happy and hopeful. Margaret felt tears starting in her eyes. Emma had learned not just to play music, but to understand that music could help people feel better. This was the most important lesson of all. I think that is a beautiful idea, Margaret said. We can work together to make your performance really special. They spent the next 2 weeks preparing for the concert. Margaret helped Emma practice the song until she could play it perfectly. They also talked about how to perform with emotion and meaning, not just correct notes. Remember, Margaret told Emma, you are not just playing music for people to hear. You are sharing your feelings with them. Let the music tell them the story about hope and joy. Emma practiced every day with dedication that impressed everyone. Vincent would stop his work to listen when Emma was playing. Mrs. Wilson would pause her cleaning to hear the beautiful music coming from the music room. 3 days before the concert, Emma made an unexpected request. Margaret, I want to ask you something important. What is it? I want you to come to my concert. I know you are just the housekeeper and usually do not go to school events, but your teaching is the reason I can play piano now. I want you to be there. Margaret felt touched, but also worried. Emma, I do not think that would be appropriate. Your parents and other family members should be there, not employees from your father's house. But you are not just an employee. Emma said, you are my teacher and my friend, please come. It would mean a lot to me. Margaret promised to think about it. That evening she talked to Vincent about Emma's request. Of course you should come, Vincent said immediately. Emma is right. You are the reason she learned to love music. You should be there to see her perform. But it might seem strange to other people. A housekeeper sitting with the family at a school concert. Vincent looked serious. Margaret, I need to tell you something. Emma does not know the whole truth about who you are, but I think she deserves to know before the concert. What do you mean? I think Emma should know that you are not just a housekeeper who happens to know piano. She should know that you are a trained musician who gave up your career to help your family. She should know that having you as a teacher is a rare privilege. Margaret felt uncertain. We agreed that Emma should not know about my background. You said it might make her feel guilty. I was wrong about that, Vincent said. Emma has learned to love music because of who you are as a person and as a teacher. She should understand what a gift she has been given. Margaret thought about this carefully. What if it changes how she feels about the lessons? What if she becomes nervous or feels pressured? Then we will deal with that together. But I think Emma is strong enough to handle the truth, and I think she deserves to know it. The next day, Margaret and Vincent sat down with Emma in the music room. Margaret felt nervous about having this conversation. Emma, Vincent began, we need to tell you something important about Margaret. Emma looked confused. What about her? Margaret took a deep breath. Emma, I have not been completely honest with you about my background. I am a housekeeper, but that is not all I am. What do you mean? I studied music at the Royal Conservatory. I was training to be a professional pianist. I had to stop my music career when my father became ill, but I am a trained musician. Emma stared at Margaret with wide eyes. You went to the Royal Conservatory? That is one of the best music schools in the world. Yes, I was offered a scholarship to study in Europe, but I had to turn it down to take care of my father. Emma was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. So when you have been teaching me piano, you have been teaching me the same way professional musicians learn? Yes, but I've been teaching you in a way that focuses on joy and expression first, because that is what I think is most important. Wow. Emma said slowly, I had no idea. You are like a real concert pianist, and you have been teaching me. Margaret watched Emma's face carefully, trying to see how she was feeling about this news. Are you upset that we did not tell you before? Vincent asked his daughter. Emma shook her head. No, I am not upset. I am amazed. Margaret, you gave up your whole career to help your family. Yes, but it was the right thing to do. And now you are working as a housekeeper to make money for your father's treatment? Margaret nodded. Emma was quiet again for several minutes. Then she looked at Margaret with new respect in her eyes. You are the most brave and good person I have ever met, she said. And now I understand why my playing has improved so much. I have been learning from someone who really knows music. Margaret felt relieved. Emma was handling the news better than she had expected. Does this change how you feel about playing? At the concert, Vincent asked. Yes, Emma said. Now I want to play even better. I want to make Margaret proud. I want to show everyone what I learned from such an amazing teacher. Margaret felt her heart swell with pride and affection for Emma. You already make me proud, she said. Not because of how well you play, but because of how much you love music and how much you want to share that love with others. The day of the concert arrived quickly. Margaret wore her best dress, which was still quite simple compared to the clothes that other parents wore. But Vincent insisted that she sit with him and Emma's mother in the front row. Emma's mother, an elegant woman named Catherine, was curious about Margaret. Vincent tells me you are Emma's piano teacher, she said. Double quotes. Yes, Emma is a wonderful student. She has told me so much about you. She says you made her love music for the first time in her life? Margaret smiled. Emma already had the love inside her. I just helped her discover it. When it was time for Emma to perform, Margaret felt nervous for her. The auditorium was full of people, and Emma had never played in front of such a large audience before. Emma walked onto the stage wearing a beautiful blue dress. She sat down at the piano and adjusted the bench. For a moment, she looked out at the audience and found Margaret's face in the crowd. She smiled and nodded slightly, then Emma began to play. The music that filled the auditorium was absolutely beautiful. Emma played Morning Sunshine with perfect technique, but more importantly, she played it with real emotion. Every note seemed to carry her feelings of hope and joy. The audience was completely silent, listening to the lovely melody. As Emma played, Margaret remembered the first time she had heard Emma say she hated piano. Now Emma was performing with confidence and grace, sharing her love of music with hundreds of people. Margaret felt tears of pride running down her cheeks. When Emma finished playing. The audience clapped for a long time. Several people stood up to show how much they appreciated her performance. Emma smiled widely and took a bow. After the concert, many people came up to Emma to congratulate her. They told her how beautiful her playing was and how much they enjoyed listening to her music. "Where do you take piano lessons?" one woman asked. "Your teacher must be excellent." Emma looked around until she found Margaret in the crowd. "My teacher is right here," she said, taking Margaret's hand. "Her name is Margaret, and she is the best piano teacher in the world." Margaret felt embarrassed by all the attention, but also proud. Several parents asked if Margaret gave lessons to other children. Vincent answered for her, saying that Margaret was very selective about her students. On the drive home, Emma was excited and happy. "Did you hear how much people clapped? And did you see how many people were crying during my song? I think the music really did make them feel good. You played beautifully," Vincent said. "I was so proud of you. I could not have done it without Margaret," Emma said. "She taught me that music is not about being perfect. It is about sharing feelings with other people." That night, Vincent asked Margaret to come to his office. She expected him to talk about Emma's performance, but instead he had different news. "I got a call today from Dr. Harrison," Vincent said. "He has good news about your father." Margaret felt her heart jump. What kind of news? 6 months later, Margaret stood in front of a beautiful new building with a sign that read, "Ashford Music Foundation." Vincent had kept his promise and created a music program for children who could not afford expensive lessons. Margaret was the director, and she had already helped 30 children discover their love of music. The foundation offered free piano lessons, violin lessons, and even singing classes. They had instruments for children to borrow and take home. They had concerts where students could perform for their families. Most importantly, they had teachers who understood that music was about joy and expression, not just technical perfection. Margaret's father had made a complete recovery from his illness. He was healthy and strong again, and he had started working part-time at a bookstore near his home. Every week he called Margaret to tell her how proud he was of what she had accomplished. "I always knew you were meant to share music with the world," he told her during one of their calls. "I just never imagined it would happen in such a wonderful way." Emma had become one of Margaret's assistant teachers. She helped the youngest children learn their first songs and showed them that music could be fun. Emma's own playing had improved dramatically, and she was now good enough to perform difficult classical pieces. But more importantly, she had learned to use music as a way to express her feelings and connect with other people. Vincent had changed the most of all of them. He was still a successful businessman, but he had learned to treat people with kindness and respect. He visited the Music Foundation regularly and often stayed to listen to the children's lessons. He had even started taking piano lessons himself from Margaret. "I want to understand what Emma loves about music," he had told Margaret when he asked for lessons. "And I want to spend more time doing things that matter." Vincent was not a natural musician like Emma, but he worked hard and was making good progress. Margaret enjoyed teaching him because he approached music with humility and genuine desire to learn. The Music Foundation was located in a building that Vincent had bought and renovated specifically for the program. It had practice rooms with good pianos, a large performance hall, and even a small recording studio where students could make recordings of their playing. But Margaret's favorite part of the building was the main teaching room, where she gave group lessons to children who were just starting to learn music. This room had windows that looked out onto a garden, and it was filled with the sounds of children laughing and playing beautiful music. On this particular morning, Margaret was preparing for a special event. It was the Foundation's first annual gala concert where students would perform for donors and supporters. Emma was going to play a challenging piece by Chopin, and several other students were going to perform songs they had learned. Margaret was nervous but excited. This concert would show the community what the foundation had accomplished in just 6 months. It would also help raise money to expand the program and help even more children. As Margaret tuned the pianos and arranged the chairs in the performance hall, she thought about how much her life had changed. A year ago, she had been a sad and tired housekeeper who thought her dreams of music were gone forever. Now she was doing exactly what she had always wanted to do, and helping other people discover the same joy she had found in music. Emma arrived early to practice her piece one more time. She was wearing a beautiful green dress and looked confident and mature. It was hard to believe this was the same angry, unhappy girl who had arrived at Vincent's house just 6 months earlier. "Are you nervous?" Margaret asked Emma as she warmed up at the piano. "A little bit," Emma said, "but mostly I am excited. I love performing now. I love sharing music with people." "You have come so far since your first lesson," Margaret said. "I am so proud of you." "I could never have done it without you," Emma said. "You saved my life, Margaret. Before I met you, I felt lost and angry all the time. Music gave me a way to express my feelings and connect with other people." Margaret hugged Emma gently. "Music was already inside you, I just helped you find it." Vincent arrived an hour before the concert was supposed to begin. He looked nervous and excited at the same time. He had invited many important business leaders to attend the concert, hoping to get their support for the foundation. "How are you feeling?" Vincent asked Margaret. "Good," Margaret said. "The children are ready and they are all excited to perform." How is our star performer?" Vincent asked Emma. "Ready to play," Emma said with a smile. "I practiced the Chopin piece until I could play it in my sleep." "I am so proud of both of you," Vincent said. "Emma, you have become an amazing young woman. And Margaret, you have created something truly special here." As guests began arriving for the concert, Margaret greeted them and told them about the foundation's work. Many of the donors were impressed by what they saw. Children from the program served as ushers, showing guests to their seats with confidence and pride. Margaret noticed that many of the children's families had come to the concert too. These were working families who could never have afforded private music lessons for their children. Now their children were performing alongside Emma, who had grown up with every advantage. Music had brought them all together as equals. The concert began with a group of young children singing a simple song about friendship. Their voices were sweet and clear, and their joy was obvious to everyone in the audience. Margaret watched from the side of the stage and felt her heart swell with pride. One by one, students performed pieces they had learned at the foundation. There were piano solos, violin pieces, and even a small ensemble that played together. Each performance showed not just technical skill, but real love for music. Finally, it was time for Emma to perform. She walked onto the stage with confidence and sat down at the beautiful grand piano that Vincent had donated to the foundation. The audience became very quiet, waiting to hear what she would play. Emma began the Chopin piece with perfect technique and deep emotion. The music was challenging and beautiful, full of complex rhythms and flowing melodies. As Emma played, Margaret could see that she was not just performing notes on a page. She was telling a story with the music, sharing her feelings with everyone. In the audience, when Emma finished, the audience gave her a standing ovation that lasted for several minutes. People were amazed that such a young person could play so beautifully and with such feeling. Emma smiled widely and took several bows, but then Emma did something that surprised everyone. Instead of leaving the stage, she walked to the microphone that was set up for announcements. "Thank you all for coming tonight," Emma said. "I want to tell you about someone very special before we end the concert." Margaret felt confused. This was not part of the program they had planned. 6 months ago, I hated piano," Emma continued. "I thought music was boring and pointless. But then I met Margaret Chun, who became my teacher. Margaret did not just teach me to play piano. She taught me to love music and to understand that music can bring people together and make the world more beautiful." The audience was listening carefully to Emma's words. What you might not know is that Margaret gave up her own career as a professional musician to take care of her sick father. She was trained at the Royal Conservatory and could have been a famous concert pianist. Instead, she chose to help her family and then to help all of us learn to love music. Margaret felt tears starting in her eyes. She had not expected Emma to talk about her background. Margaret taught me that music is not about being perfect or impressing people, Emma said. Music is about expressing what is in your heart and sharing that with other people. That is what we have all tried to do tonight. Emma paused and looked directly at Margaret. Margaret, would you please come on stage? I want everyone to hear you play. Margaret shook her head and tried to stay hidden at the side of the stage. But the audience had heard Emma's words and began clapping and calling for Margaret to perform. Vincent came over to Margaret and took her hand. They want to hear you play, he said gently, and you deserve to have people hear your gift. But this is the children's concert, Margaret said. Tonight should be about them. Tonight is about music bringing people together, Vincent said. Please play something for us. Margaret looked out at the audience and saw all the children she had been teaching. They were clapping and smiling and clearly wanted her to perform. Emma was still standing by the microphone, waiting. Finally, Margaret walked onto the stage. The audience clapped enthusiastically as she sat down at the piano. She looked out at all the faces watching her and felt nervous for a moment. It had been years since she had performed for such a large audience. Then Margaret began to play. She chose a piece that was technically challenging but also deeply emotional. As her fingers moved across the keys, she forgot about being nervous. She forgot about the audience watching her. She just let the music flow through her. The piece she played told a story of struggle and hope, of dreams lost and dreams found. It spoke about the power of love and sacrifice and the way that beauty could emerge from difficult times. As Margaret played, she thought about her journey from the conservatory to the mansion to this moment on stage. When the music ended, the audience was completely silent for several seconds.